Good morning.
We can't hear you again.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Dr. Holland.
See your mouth moving.
Test 1, 2.
Oh,
Barely.
Did you hear me there?
you're
Barely.
Barely there? Wow.
but better. At least we have voice. No.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Barely.
Barely.
Okay. Oh, I don't know what's the deal. But is it good enough for you to hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. As long as you're the only speaker, it would be able to hear you.
Okay, so much for trying to start early. I'm not really sure how many of you are on in Collaborate. You can hear me now? Okay. I apologize for the confusion. Always test your technology before you're ready to get started, but I usually don't have a problem with my setup. Who knows, planets are aligned today or what the deal is, but thank you for being here. I'm going to kind of quickly because I forget how long Zoom actually lets you talk to a larger group. Usually it's one-on-one that I use it, so I get unlimited time, but anyway, I want to go back over the assignments that are actually due tomorrow. If you haven't turned it in, the RMR 1 assignment. And there's also the other SPSS assignment. I want to talk a little bit about that, but please know that next week in class, on Saturday when we meet the first time face-to-face, I will spend some time in class going over that assignment as well. So walk you through that. So what I'm going to try to do is share my screen here, and hopefully I won't get cut off.
Rachel, turn your volume off. Please. Please.
Okay, can you guys see this? You guys still hearing me okay? It's better when I talk loud. Yes, okay. I'll try to keep my my volume up. So here's your assignments coming up. Most of you have already turned in this Clark and Stoner article. I'm in the process of working my way through those. Typically how I'll grade things is the order that you turn them in. So if you turned it in early, then hopefully you have that. And then know that you've got some time, another week if you so choose. It's not required, but if you want to fix up what you did, I will regrade it, based on what you turned into me later. So you'll have an opportunity to fix that up. Again, one of the reasons why I wanted to do that and give you another opportunity to turn it in is because usually I talk about this during the first class and we make it part of the instruction, and I'll still be referring to it in class next week, but usually we have class before that assignment's actually due. So you didn't really get that because of the way the schedule fell this year. So this semester. So anyway, I wanted to give you a chance to do that. And so if you received those, I think 4 I've turned back to you guys. If you received those, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what you saw there. Then we have our class next Saturday. Then on the following day, SPSS 1 assignment is due, and I will talk about that in class. As I said, the SPSS 2 assignment then is going to be due the following week. I will have another Saturday session that day, so if you have any questions on that assignment, you can hopefully get those clarified at the time. So looking at the Clark and Stoner, like I said, I have about half of the ones that have been graded and returned with some feedback. And then you have an opportunity to turn any resubmissions in until September 18th. So if you haven't turned them in, I will get to those early this week and get those graded and get those turned back to you in Blackboard. So one of the things that sometimes students may not be too familiar with is the editing capabilities in Word. So this is just an example from the assignment, not necessarily from this class, but anything that you see in red like that is stuff that I typed in there for you as corrections or suggestions for ways to change it. And then there's these little what are those things called? Dialogue bubbles, I guess. And so if you click on those or over in the right margin, you'll see something that looks like this, which has, are you guys seeing this on my screen with all your faces on it? You just see in the PowerPoint.
Just seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. So over here on the right there, these are notes that I just give you. Okay, so if you've taken a look at it, you've probably seen that. So what I'll do is I'll make edits on your Word document that you turned in, and so that you can see, where I have those specific suggestions for you. And then also there'll be another PDF document where I have put down scores for each of the things that I was looking for. So my primary thing that I'm looking for is, did you talk about what I asked you to talk about? In other words, if I asked you about the research problem, which is, yes, I'm going to ask you about that. Did you address that, and did it seem to make sense? And was your response reasonable for the particular study that we're reading? So then you'll have notes there. It's not a rubric, obviously, because it doesn't have levels of performance, but I will try to put some notes there to give you some additional information. So hopefully that information will help you to know how to fix up what you turned in so that you can resubmit that. Okay, is there any questions that you guys have about the kind of the process that I go through to give you feedback on the assignments? And does that seem like that's helpful to you?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
pretty much all the assignments you turn in, except for some of the things you've already done, you'll get sheets like this. So I'll give you back your original and also this extra sheet that sort of tallies up the points for you. This is an old one. You can see down at the bottom there, it was on a 5-point scale. This counted as 6 points for you guys. So it's a little bit different, but basically the same kind of formula. All right. So then last Saturday when we met, I kind of went over all these questions. I'm not going to go back over all these, but I do want to open it up for any questions that you might have, either if you have completed the assignment and you weren't sure, or if you haven't yet completed, was there any of these bits and pieces that you had questions about that maybe I could address?
So I looked over, this is Jem Ballo. I looked over the document this morning that you sent. Thank you. It is very helpful. And I only looked at it briefly. So, but I did have the question that some of your feedback, do I need to look for another resource outside of the article to answer the questions? Or should I find everything inside the article each time?
Well, yeah, the challenge here is I haven't really talked about all these things. I did address them a little bit last week, but basically in class this next week, I will go over all these things, or most all of them, in terms of chapter 3 and what needs to be in a quantitative chapter 3. So I'm going to elaborate more on those topics, but you're right in that, like your Johnson and Christensen would be a useful resource, or even your Yaki text would be a useful resource. Like, for example, on this page, what types of, number 12, what types of data analysis were used? Okay, so they used a one sample t-test, but for number 13, why were these types of analyses appropriate for use in this study? So you would need to know a little bit about a one sample t-test and why you would, in the situations where you would use it. In this case, for this study, they only had one sample, right? They just had the group of Braille reading students, and they took their mean score and they compared it to a national norm, okay, which is 100, okay? And so they were, that sort of is the definition of when you'd use a one sample t-test, is when you're taking a mean for one group and comparing it to some known value. And you're saying, is this mean for this group the different than the known value that we're comparing it to? Okay, so your Yaki text could give you some background on that in the chapter 5, I think is the chapter that has that. So it's not required that you cite other sources, but when you're answering these why questions, it's nice to have a backup with some known resource that, and like I said, your Johnson and Christensen or your Yaki texts are going to help you in those areas. But again, I haven't really gone over all these things.
Right.
Ethical issues. I haven't talked about that. So, you would have to read up a little bit on that, but you're going through the training on it and some other things. So it'll all come to fruition to you in more sense as we go through these assignments. But again, just because we're kind of out of sync a little bit with class, that's maybe why you don't know as much about these things as you think you might. So, learning is with the struggle, right?
Yeah.
If you don't struggle with it a little bit, then I mean, if you already know all this stuff, then it's a kind of a waste of our time. But these are things that we're going to continue to hit throughout the course of the semester. So as you go through these RMR assignments, this is going to become easier and easier for you because you're going to know what these different things are that I'm asking for. With
Right.
articles, but same sort of stuff that you're looking for. Does that help?
Right. Yes, it does. Thank you. And it because my gut was like, I must need to find know more information outside of what's stated in the article to answer your question fully. So that makes me feel better because at least I was on the right track following your feedback. So
Okay, so you look at this as kind of the pretest, and I'm giving you a chance to correct your errors on the pretest.
Right. Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other specific questions about any of the content that I'm asking you for? Okay, moving on. And always, if you run into something tonight or tomorrow when you're working on this, if you haven't turned it in yet and you got a question, just text me or email me, and I'll touch base with you and help talk you through it. All right. So with the SPSS assignment coming up next week, I just want to kind of set the stage for that, just so you get an idea of what's going on there. If you've looked at the assignment itself in Blackboard, it looks something like this. This is kind of the first one, so I'll give you a little bit more information, but all the instructions for the assignment are in a Word document that's linked below. So you can't see it here, but there's a bunch of links down below all this text that has all the files that you'll need to do this assignment. Some of them are data files that were included with the textbook. Some of them are data files that I created, and one of them is a Word document. So find the Word document. The Word document has the basic instructions, and if you just follow through the Word document, it should tell you exactly what to do. Now, right next to you, you're going to need to have your Yaki text, because you're going to be doing pointing and clicking from screenshots in Yaki, and then you're going to apply that learning from that chapter to a new data set that I've given you. So this first assignment covers chapters 1 through 4. Chapters 1 through 3 are pretty much just how do I use SPSS? What are some of the things I can do to get descriptive statistics or to get some basic graphs out of the system? But then chapter 4 is about measuring reliability for responses to some sort of assessment. So that one's going to be a little bit different than the first two, but all of that's outlined in that Word document. Okay, so in the Word document, you're going to have some questions. So it says here you'll answer some questions within the Word document. So you don't have to make an APA formatted production of this. All I want you to do is just answer these items within the Word document, save it, and then submit it using that same sort of, criteria that we use, that you use your last name first. Okay, so not only are you going to submit that Word document, but there's also some data files that you're going to edit and then save and then submit those as well. Okay, so we have a couple of different things that you're going to submit. So it's not just going to be one file that you submit. So part of this exercise is just really learning, and as it talks about in chapter 1, learning to manage the files that come out of SPSS and that you use there. So you'll be turning in some data files as well as an output file, which is going to be your graphs and all the tests that you ran in there. And then there's also the Word document. So there's several files. I just want to prepare you for that, and it'll tell you that in the Word document what you need to do. Now, for all the SPSS assignments, I've created a bunch of videos that are posted in YouTube that show you how to do the assignment. Okay, it gives you some of the background information. So if you learn better that way, you can do it that way or do it together, whatever you want to do. I also made, you can see down here at the bottom, this link is for a playlist for all the SPSS videos for the whole course. All right, so if you go to that link, you could save that in your favorites, and then you can just go there and scroll down to the YouTube video that is appropriate for the assignment. Okay, so I haven't checked those links, but let me know if they're not working. Last time I checked, they were good. So that's there. So all this is written out in the assignment itself. And again, below that, there's going to be a number of links to files that are set up there for your use during the assignment. So here's the first part of what the Word document looks like. So here you can see, here's chapter 1, working with SPSS files. And then I tell you, review the examples provided by Yaki in chapter 1, paying attention to these parts. Okay, so obviously I've identified those. So those are going to be important things that you need to know for the actual assignment. Okay. And then you need to work through the examples using the data file. You may want to. Okay, so that's up to you. I'm not going to collect that from you, but what I've done is given you this chapter 1 example data file in the assignment, and then you'll open that up in SPSS, and you can work through, starting at the beginning of chapter 1 in your Yaki, and you can use that data file to do everything that he says for you to do. So that's like starts on page 6. Now, just so you know, Yaki asked you to type in all the information. I want to save you time, so I'm giving you that data file so you don't have to spend the time to punch in all those crazy numbers into the data file. But now we get down here to these items. Here's where I want you to answer the questions. Okay, so what are the 2 different types of windows or tabs that are found in the data editor window? Okay, so you just go into that and type that in there. If you want to use a different color so I can see it better, that's fine. You can put it in red or blue or something, but boldface if you choose or whatever. But I will go through this assignment and pull up these Word documents and grade it from there. All right. So again, I'm trying to just kind of save us time. You don't have to put this in, APA format or anything like that. I just answer the questions right in there. All right. Then you can see there's several of those. So here are 4 different questions that are in there. Again, I'm going to be going over all this on Saturday. So, if you want to get in there and dig around, that's great. Work through all this as best you can. Realistically, it's going to take you a couple of hours to do this. So just recognize that there's a pretty good time commitment to get these SPSS assignments completed. And again, I'll go over all this and let you answer questions in class next week. All right, so here's what the data file looks like. And then like that first question said, it asks you about the 2 views. Well, one's called the data view. And if you look at this, you can see that across the top, there's there's a number of headings to these columns. Well, these are the different variables that are in the data set. So this looks a lot like an Excel worksheet, but it doesn't actually have the header in the first row. In fact, each of the rows represents a different person in this data set, okay, or a record in the data set. So here's all the people. So this shows data for 10 people. And then across the top, these are the variables that are measured. So there's a student ID, what campus they're in, whether they're gifted or not, whether they're special ed. Now you'll notice that this isn't yes or no, or the name of the campus, but instead the data has been coded into numbers. So one of the things you have to do in SPSS is a lot of your variables that are usually categorical variables like male, female, or race, ethnicity, or are they participating in special ed? You have to code those with numbers. All right. So generally, special ed, if there's a 1 there, that means yes, the kid's receiving special ed services. If there's a 0, they're not receiving those services. Okay, and so over here on the far right, I think we have race ethnicity. Okay, so there's 7 different state categories for race ethnicity. So each of them have been coded as well. So that's just something that know that's going to be there. And then here's like actual numeric data, like the students' scale score on their algebra SPS or STAR test. All right, so that's there. So that's the data view. Then there's a tab down at the bottom that'll take you to the variable view, and it looks like this. So we've got we've got the variable view, and so this is kind of behind the scenes of this data view. So each of the variables, you can define certain things with them. So you can see here's the student ID, that's this first column. Here's campus, it's the second column. And in this column right here, you can define what the codes mean. In other words, number 1 is for Howard High School. Then there's going to be a 2, which is for a different high school. Okay, so we can identify our codes here in our variable view. So you'll be working in this view as well as this view here in order to manipulate the data. And then once you've done all the things that I asked you to do with the data set, then you would save it, and then you would turn that data set in as part of the assignment. Okay, so there's going to be a data file. Now notice I've got here .sav. Okay, you guys are familiar with .doc, right? Is a word thing. Well, the data file from SPSS has the extension .sav. So you're going to get a bunch of these files saved on your computer, organized into folders, right? And so you'll look at them later on and you won't know if it's a data file or what. Well, data file always has the extension .sav. Okay, so that's, that's just something good to know. Then you're also going to be doing some output files, and your output files will have stuff that looks like this. So in chapter 3, when you go to do some graphing, your output will look something like this. So chapter 1, you're mostly just manipulating the data in the data set. Then in chapter 2, you'll be doing some output for descriptive statistics like mean, median, mode, variance, standard deviation, that sort of stuff. And it'll, again, walk you through that process, and that Word document will walk you through the process. And then in chapter 3, you're going to be making some graphs. So this is some examples from your output from that. And you can see here, I put at the bottom, this is actually item 15. So I tell you, generate a simple bar chart with race ethnicity as the category axis. So here's what it should look like when you go to run that bar chart. Okay, then over here is the second part, the second bar chart, by adding a campus variable to the column. So now this is disaggregated by campus. So it's still showing race ethnicity, but it's showing the 4 high schools that are involved with this, and it breaks it down even further. Okay, so then I give you a note, you'll generate 2 separate graphics, because in the past students weren't always reading exactly what I said there, so just want to make sure you understood. Okay, you also do something like this, make a scatter plot with 2 variables, algebra scale score on the x-axis, biology on the y. Each dot represents 2 scores for single students. Okay, so each dot over here represents 1 kid and their score on both the algebra test and on the math test. Okay, now I'll tell you to go in and use the chart editor. So you'll double click on the chart that you make, and you can add this line of best fit. Okay, so you can see right here in the Word document, I tell you to do that. Just follow my instructions. Do that so that your final chart should look like this. All right, so then you will submit both that first data file that I asked you for, plus some output files. Okay, and so the output files will have your graphs, have your charts and everything. And I'm going to demonstrate this all to you in class, but I just want to make sure if you're going out there that you at least have an idea of what you might be doing during this upcoming week and what's involved with that. Right. And then in chapter 4 has to do with reliability. So we'll be looking for what's called internal consistency, reliability. And on this is a separate data set. So for the first 3 chapters, you'll use the same data set that I've already looked at. For chapter 4, I have a different one because we need a different kind of data. In fact, we need students' answers or whether their responses were correct or not for 16 items that were on this test. Okay, so this was some CBA that was given in February of 2016. And here where it starts with item 1 there, this actually shows whether the students got the question correct or incorrect. Okay, so this first student I can see got item 1 incorrect because they have a 0 there. Whereas the second student got item 1 correct because there's a 1 there. Okay, so you're going to use this 16 item data to actually come up with what is the internal consistency of this particular test. Because that's a characteristic of assessments that you want to make sure that your tests are consistent. In other words, that you get consistent results if students were to take the test over and over again. And again, I'm going to walk you through how to do this, but just, you know, as a way to think about reliability, imagine that you sat down and took a test, okay, math test, let's say, and you finished the math test, and some of the questions you knew, some of the questions you didn't know, and you guessed or whatever, and then Will Smith came along with his memory eraser, and you looked at it in a flash, and you forgot all about the test that you just took, okay? Now, let's say you took the test the second time right afterwards, but you've forgotten the first one. Would you expect your score to be exactly the same on the second test as it was on the first test that you took before your memory got wiped out? Probably not. Why not?
You've wiped out all the information that was in your head.
Well, no, assume you still have your math knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, nothing's changed. It's just wiped back from the time before you took the test, okay, forward. So, okay, so remember what I said is like some of the questions were hard, some of the questions were easy. You probably would get the easy ones correct on the second test, right? But if you guessed on some on the first and you don't remember which ones you guessed on,
Right.
there's a good likelihood that you might guess a different answer the second time you take it, right? So
Right.
your results are probably going to be different. Now, if the test was super easy, if it was adding 1-digit numbers, then you probably would be consistent, right? But if it was a really hard calculus test, you know, your chances of having exactly the same answers on the second test would be pretty slim. Okay, so if we kind of look at some trials, okay, so let's say we did this each time and we gave a person the test 4 times, erasing their memory of any previous test beforehand. So we got an 80 on the first one, an 82 on the second, an 80 on the third, and a 78 on the fourth one. Their mean is about 80, okay, over this. So let's say we use another person, we give them the same test and erase their memory each time, and let's say these are their results. Okay, 80, 92, 66, 82. The mean is still 80 though, right? Okay, so which of these 2 sets of scores seem to be more reliable? In other words, you get the same result, approximately the same result. Would you say it was the first person or the second person? Hopefully you see the first person, right? So, you know, their scores are about all the same. However, this person, there was a wide range of values there, okay? So, says my meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. All right, so so hopefully you see that these scores seem to be a lot more reliable because, you know, it's like your bathroom scale, right? You step up there, you know, if you step on there and it gives you a reading, then you get off and you step back on and it's 5 pounds more or 5 pounds less, it raises some questions about how good your scale is, right? Okay, well, tests are the same way. We're measuring something. We're measuring math ability. And so we want to make sure that our assessments provide consistent results. Okay, so that's just a little bit about that. I don't want to go too far in depth into that because number one, we don't really have time for that. But we can talk more about that in class the next time. Okay, so that was really pretty quick. Let's see, stop sharing. All right, so that's about all I had for today. What questions do you guys have for me?
Okay, so this may be a stupid question.
No,
Uh, Okay, Dr. Holland. Okay, so in chapter 4 for the 16 items for the part 2, where the students, where it shows a 0 for incorrect and 1 for correct, the mean came out to be about 8.42. How do I read that? I saw the alpha graph to kind of indicate the degree of consistency, but how do I look at the mean and know that that's a good, I guess, indicator of
Okay, so tell me
consistency?
what a student would have if they got every question correct.
16.
16. So what they're saying is that the average score on the test was 8.2.
Yes.
So that's 8 out of 16 correct. So that's
So-
50% of the items correct. So based on that, would you say that the students had a really good grasp of the math material that was being tested?
No.
If you were a math teacher and you gave a test and 52% of your kids passed it, you wouldn't be, or their average score was 52. Okay.
Okay.
That
Thank
tells
you.
something about how well the students have grasped the material.
Okay.
Okay, so did this help or did I just scare you?
I think those that have worked through it, it didn't scare them, it helped them.
Okay.
It's very, for me, if I could do it, I know anyone can, but it was, Dr. Holland went step by step by step, and it was really right from the text too, so it was good.
Okay. believe
And
me,
it does take you a few hours
easier for you.
for me.
I know it might not seem that way, but I actually am trying to make it easier for you. And I know it's a lot. I know it is, but also you got to, kind of frame it in terms of we're just getting started here. And by the time you get to the end of the semester, it's going to be a lot more comfortable and you're going to understand sort of all of it as a big picture, I think a lot better, because right now you don't know what you don't know. Right. So just kind of trust in the process and we'll get there. And the most important thing is to have your schedule set so that you set aside time so that you can work on this, on a weekly basis. Because if you get behind 1 or 2 or 3 assignments, it's a killer to try to get caught up. Okay. Anything else? Other questions? If you have a question and you're afraid to say it in front of everybody else, that's fine. But let me know and contact me individually and I will work through it. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great weekend. And if I don't talk to you sooner, you'll probably get an email from me, a reminder email on Thursday or Friday about Saturday's class. But otherwise, I will see you on Saturday. In the beautiful.
Thank you.
In room.
Enjoy the
Thank you,
game.
Dr. Holland.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll go see soccer for 3-year-olds.
Bye.
Whales running around. See how it goes. All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.